Chapter 35 opens up by reminding the Israelites of the Sabbath regulations. I want you to know that it's not a coincidence that the regulations for the Sabbath pop up again here in chapter 35. Last time we saw them was back in chapter 31, and on that occasion we saw work and rest held together by the grace of God. What do we see now in chapter 35? Work and rest held together once again by the grace of God. Make no mistake, God is putting before them the work that they must do, but he starts out by reminding them of the importance of rest, because ultimately it all depends on God and it does not depend on them. This is God's work, and they are privileged that they get to play a part in the work. Okay, after the reminder, we read about the materials needed for the construction of the tabernacle. Now, you might be asking, hang on a minute, haven't we already seen this? Haven't we gone through this already? I mean, this is why people don't read the Bible, right? Because it's just so tedious. Here we go again with a whole load of details that don't actually affect my life. Well, yes and no, actually. Sure, we've seen these details before, but on that occasion, remember, it was God revealing his plan to Moses on top of the mountain. Since then, we've seen the most horrific rebellion against God. We've seen Moses pleading with God on behalf of the people, and we've seen forgiveness and relationship restored and the covenant given once again to the people. Now the instructions are given not to Moses, but to the people. This is actually a key moment in Israel's history. How now will they respond when it comes to actually acting in accordance with what they say they want and what they say they believe? It should bring us deep delight to see the exact same words coming up here as they did a few chapters ago, because it shows us the Israelites are keen to be obedient and diligent right down to the details of obedience. They want to get it right because they want to please the God who has saved them and loved them. Notice that they don't say, oh, good plan, Moses, I like where you're going with some of those ideas, but here's a few little innovations and tweaks to add on top of what you've started. Nobody does that. Their simple desire is to understand what God has said and to live in accordance with it. Now that desire ought to be present in the heart of every single person who's part of the people of God. It might not look as grand and glorious as the construction of an awesome tabernacle experience, but this is what we do every day as Christians. It's what we do every week when we gather on Sundays. We seek to understand together, what has God said? What does it look like to live in accordance with it? And then off we go into the next week, willing to obey with joy. In fact, that willingness, that joy, they are essential characteristics of the Christian life. And we see them here. As we've been going through the instructions for the tabernacle, you might well have been wondering to yourself, how are they going to fund this elaborate project? That linen is going to cost a lot. What about that fine bronze? And don't get me started on the gold. This is going to cost an arm and a leg. Is there a long, drawn-out fundraising period for this project? Do we see Moses running up and down the aisles of the church, shaking donation buckets in everyone's faces? Do we see people groan and moan under the pressure of being forced to put in more than they really want to give? Not at all. Here we see what it looks like to be a joyful giver, giving freely, not out of compulsion, but out of a desire to bless others and glorify God. Look at verse 5. Everyone who is willing must come and give an offering. Verse 21, and everyone who was willing and whose heart moved them came and brought an offering to the Lord. Verse 22, all who were willing came and brought offerings of great value. Verse 26, all the women who were willing and had the skill served in the construction of this tabernacle. And finally, verse 29, all the Israelite men and women who were willing brought to the Lord a free will offering for the work that the Lord, through Moses, had commanded them to do. I think that is a stunning picture of what it looks like to serve and to give, not out of compulsion and not out of a desire to earn relationship with God, but simply out of a desire to serve and give with joy and out of the freedom that comes from having received relationship with God. Some, no doubt, give a lot, and some, no doubt, give a little. But they each give freely and gladly in accordance with their ability. The same with skill, but some people's skills are shockingly developed. Think of Bezalel and Aholiab. And some people's skill is much more simple. Think of spinning the goat hair, dyeing the ram skins. But everyone's doing their bit. Everyone's playing their part. Everyone's grateful to God for what he has done, and they're keen to do what they can now out of love for him. In Romans 12, we see the same picture playing out in the life of the church. We read, "For just as each of us has one body with many members, these members do not all have the same function. So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts, according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy, in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully." May that be a picture of our lives and the part that we each gladly play among the people of God.